Eclipse Part 2. In this second part of the video, I'm going to cover some of the discovery tiles, technologies, developments, special hexes, and individual species powers. So let's start with the different types of development tokens that you're going to see in the game. The first part are the special ship part tiles. Basically, as with all discovery tokens, you have to make the choice whether you're going to take the victory point side or you're going to take the special bonus side. The ship part tiles, if you keep them, you have to either place them immediately for free onto a ship, onto an available ship spot on your board, or you can save them and then later through an upgrade action, you can place them on a ship. They follow all the same normal rules as your ships, either adding shields or extra hull points or hit points as computers or adding missile capabilities. There are a couple that do a little bit different. The jump drive grants one free jump move from one adjacent hex to another. You have to ignore wormholes, but you can use this once per activation. The morph shield, you actually regenerate one hit point at the end of each engagement round. That's what that symbol's indicating. And in addition, obviously, shield and initiative as normal. This one takes 2 energy in your ship. The Muon source, you'll notice, has a slightly darker background. This is the only ship part that you don't have to have an open slot for or discard a ship part for. This can exist outside of your ship's blueprint. So it doesn't take a ship or doesn't take a slot on your blueprint and then gives you an extra initiative and some energy on your ship. Here are some other discovery tiles. This one's interesting. This one allows you to, in the hex where you find it, you can place interceptors for free worth up to 6 brown or 6 materials. That's usually 2 interceptors, but depending on your species power, basically you get 6 free materials to place interceptors in the hex. This next one, in the hex where it's found, you can place 1 free unused cruiser. And as usual, as you place these, you would discard them after you use them because you're actually placing the ships. Here gets you immediate science, material, or money into your storage. Here gets you all 3 based on the value. Again, you're discarding these once you take the resources. Here gives you a free monolith that you can put in the hex where it was discovered, and whoever controls the hex, like most monoliths at the end of the game, would score victory points. There's an extra orbital that can be placed, and you can colonize that. Again, you've got to place in the hex where it's found. This next one, you can place between any 2 hexes. Those 2 hexes are now fully connected, so it's like creating a full wormhole between any 2 hexes, and it's worth 1 VP each. Each of the hexes are worth 1 VP at the end of the game. This next type of tile, this allows you to gain the cheapest technology available that you do not currently have. So basically it's your choice if there's a tie, and then you would discard it. So you get to choose the cheapest technology that you don't already have on the market and take it immediately. This next one here, you get to keep next to your player board, and then in any future combat you can discard it on your initiative to deal all enemy ships 1 damage. And then if you don't use it by the end of the game, it's worth 1 victory point. So it's one or the other. You can use it in a combat or keep it for the victory points. This one allows you to immediately add a warp portal. So all warp portal hexes are considered adjacent. You've got to place this in the hex that you find it, but basically you're converting a hex into a warp portal, and it's 2 victory points to whoever controls it at the end of the game. So those are all the different types of discovery tiles that you're going to find. Next, let's cover the different types of technologies. Most of these are self-evident. Neutron bombs. So you don't need to roll the dice at the end of combat. You get to destroy all cubes at the end of combat. This allows you the ability to build star bases Anything with this icon is a ship part, so this gives you the ability to get the plasma cannon, the phase shield. Here's the advanced mining, so now you can place cubes on browns with that symbol. The same goes for advanced economy and advanced labs. Allows you to place cubes on pink and orange. Gives you the ship part for additional energy. Gives you now you have the ability to get the plasma missile ship part, and this gives you the ability to get the gluon computer. Everything in the second row are additional ship parts for either shields, improved hulls, extra energy, positron computer. We talked about advanced economy, a tachyon drive. This gives you the antimatter cannon. This one is an immediate use. That's that symbol. You'd get 2 action discs immediately. The last row here, this gives you an additional build action whenever you take the build action. Gives you the ship part for the fusion drive. Advanced robotics gives you 1 disc immediately. This gives you the ability to actually build orbitals. Talked about this one. This gives you the ability now to build monoliths. The artifact key, this is an immediate one-time use. So for every hex that you control that has that symbol, and keep in mind there may be some special tokens that also have the artifact symbol. For every artifact symbol that you control, you get 5 immediate resources into your storage. So let's say you control 4 of these symbols, that would be 20. Now they have to be taken in chunks of 5 increments. So you could maybe take 5 materials, another 5 materials, 5 science, and 5 money. But for every symbol, you get 5 into your storage. And then finally, the wormhole generator allows you to move through half hexes. So if there's only a wormhole on one, it creates the wormhole that now you can travel through. All right, let's look at some of the rare technologies. The tractor beam, opponents can no longer retreat from you in battle. The antimatter splitter, remember all the hits from a single die have to be applied to a single ship normally. This allows you to actually split the damage when using that type of cannon, the antimatter cannon. You can actually split the damage and apply it to different ships. This gives you the ability, and now look, there's no ship part that's associated with this, so this would apply to all your ships that have the antimatter cannon. This one gives you the ship part to get the conifold field. The neutron absorber, basically you're immune to neutron bombs. So if someone has the technology for neutron bombs, they're going to have to roll the dice if you have the neutron absorber. This gives you the ability to get the ship part for the sentient hull, which gives you some computer points and additional hull. The cloaking device, now it takes 2 ships to pin one of yours on hexes. The distortion shield, it'll apply to all of your ships. Basically, enemy missiles get deducted 2 points on their accuracy rolls. So, and keep in mind, this just applies to missiles, so only on their missile roll does this shield take effect. The interceptor bay, this allows you to use a move action to actually move interceptors into a larger ship, and then when that larger ship gets moved, all the interceptors move with it. It's important to realize that this is a ship part, so you'll have to upgrade and add interceptor bays, but each interceptor bay ship part allows you to move up to 2 unpinned interceptors in the ship bay with 1 ship activation. And then after each activation, 1 or more of your interceptors may leave the interceptor bay and then be moved by themselves using further ship activations. And then finally, when moving interceptors in the bay, they do not affect pinning. The interceptors are unloaded from the bay at the end of the move action, and then interceptors are not allowed to have interceptor bays. It has to be a larger ship that are holding interceptors. The flux missile technology allows you to add the flux missile ship part to some of your ships. The point defense system allows you to try to shoot incoming missiles out of the sky. Basically, you get one chance to fire your cannons against incoming missiles, and then the 0-point source gives you the ability to get that ship part with a lot of energy. All right, next let's cover some of the developments. Remember, with a research action, you can also research a development. So for example, you're always going to pay the cost at the bottom of these tiles. So here this would be 8 materials, this would be 20 materials to take it. So let's go through each of these. If you purchase the warp portal, basically you can place the warp token on any hex that you can control. So this is the warp token. So basically you're adding a warp portal to the hex, and it's also worth a victory point at the end of the game. If you get the shell world, you can place this token on any hex you can control, and then you can populate it. So this would go on your board, pay the material cost, and then this you can put on a hex you control, and then you can use the colonize action, or your colony ships, I mean, to place a cube, and you can see it's also worth 5 victory points at the end of the game. Next is the security cancel. So it costs 2 of each resource type. It gives you 1 victory point at the end of the game, plus 1 victory point for each ambassador tile. Next is the diplomatic fleet. It gives you an extra space for either a victory point token or an ambassador tile. This ancient monument simply gives you 3 victory points at the end of the game. The artifact link, you can see, costs 7 material and 7 science, but it gives you 1 victory point per artifact that you control at the end of the game. And then these 3 they all work the same. They cost resources, but it gives you an immediate bonus of either science, materials, or money into your storage. You can see the one-time use symbol. So those are all the main developments and technologies that can be gained through the research action. Next, let's cover some of the special hexes that you'll encounter throughout the game. The first one that's used in every game is the Galactic Center, and you're going to select just one of the galactic centers as part of setup, either the base, the advanced, or the ancient dreadnought. Next are the ancient home worlds. You'll remember in setup these can be used to replace kind of the starting position for players going up to a 6-player game, or they can just be used to shuffle into your hex stacks. Basically, you'll put 1 ancient on it, and then you've got the different types of ships that are marked with that special symbol there, and then you'll actually place those face up. When a player defeats these, they'll keep them because they're worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. So those are the ancient homeworld tiles. These are warp portal tiles, so whenever you see that symbol, this tile is considered adjacent to any other tile with a warp portal. Or you'll remember there's the discovery token, or even a development that has those types of symbols. These simply just get shuffled into their respective hex stack before you create the draw deck at the beginning of the game. Next, let's go up here. These are ancient hive hexes. They get mixed into their respective hex stack, and then when they get revealed, you place a discovery tile on it and 3 basic alien ships, just the basic type. And then what happens is during the cleanup phase, so this is the cleanup, so you would have resolved all combat already from the prior round, you roll a die. And if it points based on the die, so let's say we rolled a 4, if this points to a discovered tile, so there would have had to have been a tile that was already discovered there, you move one of the ancient ships onto that tile. All the ancient ships are considered to have wormhole generators, so even if there wasn't a wormhole on the tile that was adjacent to this 4 roll, it still moves because they're considered to have wormholes. And then in the next round, if others are present, other players, then combat would happen. The ancients are always considered the defenders, and they have neutron bombs. So They get the defender bonus, and they'll destroy any population cubes. Keep in mind, though, you're not rolling this dice until the cleanup phase, so you have a chance to respond to ancients that move into hexes that you may have ships on. And then once the 3 original ancients have moved into tiles, or if they've been destroyed by someone moving into this tile, then you're no longer going to roll for this during the cleanup phase for this hex. Next are the supernova tiles. Again, these would just get shuffled into their respective hex stacks at the beginning of the game. When they're revealed, the player that's actually discovering the tile can position and influence and even colonize immediately. So they'll decide how to position it, they can influence it, and then they can use colony ships to colonize, and if they had the advanced versions, they could colonize there. During the cleanup phase, you're actually going to roll 2 dice, and you're going to add to those pips the number of techs on that player's fewest roll. So if there's a hex owner, I would roll 2 dice. I look on my technology track. Let's say there's a row that has 0 tech, so I'm not going to add any modifiers to the dice. So I'm just going to basically take the die roll and the number of techs on my fewest roll. If that total is greater than the current round, this supernova remains stable. So I'm always trying to get a high roll. So if I can get techs on each of my techs, I get modifiers to those die rolls. If the number is equal to or less than the current round, the hex explodes. You flip the tile over, and then you return all discs and cubes. Now, players can still move through the flipped supernova by using a wormhole generator. So the flipped tile doesn't block movement as you're trying to get to other hexes. So you can see as you get later in the game, the supernova becomes more and more unstable. If we're on round 7, then with those 2 die rolls plus my tech modifiers, I need to exceed a 7 for that hex to stay in play and for me to keep my cubes on. The next type of tile that you'll find are pulsars, and they get mixed into their hex stack, and when they get revealed, the player that was discovering it may place an influence disc on this move one. You can see it has the double rings. They can do that immediately during discover, or they can do it later, using the normal influence action. But then once around, instead of taking a normal action, and they have to do this before passing, but instead of taking a normal action, they may move that disc to an open action spot. So they revealed it, they put a disc on move. Maybe on their next turn they decide, you know what, I'm going to slide that disc over and I get a upgrade action. Now it is a modified action. You can see it's just a single ship part. Or if they decided to move it down to build, they'd get a single build. So the disc would stay there. And then during the cleanup phase, you would just basically unmark the hex that it's been used. Now you can only do this once per round. So once they make that decision, maybe you put a cube on it or something to say, you know what, this player has already used this once per round, and then during cleanup you can take that cube off or something just to show that it can be used again for the next round. Now let's say the disc was on build. The next round they'll decide, you know what, maybe I'll slide it up and take this modified move action which has 1 activation, or I can slide it over here to upgrade. So basically once per round they're kind of moving this around as a kind of a free action because the disc is already out there, but it's in lieu of their normal action, and it has to be done before passing. The next type of special tile are nebula tiles. These get shuffled into their hex stack, and then each of these subsectors act as independent hexes. You'll see they're all connected via wormholes. You'll put discovery tokens here, and you'll put a basic ancient in this subsector. You'll see there's no place to put influence discs. So you can't place an influence disc. You can only claim the discovery tile by actually having a ship present at the end of combat phase. So you would have had to move a ship in, and then once combat's complete, you can take that discovery tile, since it's impossible to put an influence disc there. The discovery tile benefits must be placed in the subsector found. So normally you've got to put it in the hex found, but here it's the subsector that's found. And then here, obviously, there's no discovery tile, but there's a basic ancient that can be fought using the normal rules. The final type of special tile are the black hole tiles. Now you actually only play with one black hole, and you'll shuffle it into its deck. There are two different types of tiles that have two different symbols, and they act a little bit differently. So basically, when it's revealed, you're going to place a discovery tile, and then the first ship to enter will claim that discovery tile immediately. You'll see there's no place to place an influence disk. Now when a ship enters the black hole, you immediately roll the die. Anytime a ship enters, it's just the first ship to enter gets that discovery tile immediately. But anytime a ship enters, you roll the dice. Ancients, if they ever enter, they're just destroyed. So when a player ship enters, you'll roll, and on a roll of a 1 or a 2, the ship takes 1 damage and immediately returns back to the black hole for a re-roll. So you're going to keep re-rolling until they actually get a 3-4 or a 5-6. If they roll a 3-4, the ship takes no damage, but they return elsewhere after 1 round. So you'll actually place the ship on the round track 1 round later, and that way you know they'll get to return back to the game. If they roll a 5 or a 6, they don't take any damage, but you're going to put them 2 rounds ahead on the round track, and they'll get to enter the game 2 rounds later. Basically, when that time comes, based on the hex symbol, before that player's action, that future round, they can move that ship. If it's this symbol, if it's this black hole, they get to move the ship to any discovered inner ring hex. So that's the one is representing any inner ring hex. They can take that ship off of the round track and put it to that hex. For this symbol, they can move it to any hex with a half wormhole pointing to empty space. And then keep in mind, if they're unable or unwilling to place, or maybe the game round that they're supposed to put the ships is beyond the game end, the ship is destroyed. So those are all the different types of special or promo hexes that you're going to encounter throughout the game. Next, let's go through each of the different species that you'll encounter and some of their advantages and disadvantages. Let's start with the Machinima. The main advantage is that with the upgrade action, they can do 3 upgrade actions or take 3 ship parts from the supply board. With the build action, they can build up to 3 ships or structures. They typically have cheaper build costs. They get a 2-ship activation when taking the move. They've got 4 slots for reputation tiles or ambassador tokens. They start with the positron computer as an initial technology. They have a 3-to-1 trade ratio, and those are the starting positions for their resources. That's the Machinima. The Iridani Empire, they actually get to start the game by drawing 2 random reputation tiles and keeping them and putting them on their victory point slots. Their ships have 2 movements. The main drawback is they have 2 influence discs less. So you leave the 2 rightmost influence track circles empty and take those discs out of the game. They've got 4 slots. You'll notice they have different ship blueprints and configurations. They start with 3 technologies, the Gauss shield, the fusion drive, and the plasma cannon. They have a 3-to-1 trade ratio, but look, they start with a lot of starting money, 26 money, 2 science, and 4 materials. That's Iridani. Next is the Ryan Hegemony. They actually start the game with a cruiser instead of an interceptor on their starting tile. They get 2 ship activations. They actually get an extra reputation spot. They'll have different starting ship blueprints that are a little bit stronger. They've got initial technology of neutron bombs and a Gauss shield. They have a 4-to-1 trade ratio, which is a disadvantage, but they have some additional starting materials that allow them to build faster. That's the Orion Hegemony. You're also going to notice on their starting hexes, some of the species may have different starting worlds. For example, they don't have an orange starting world to put an orange cube on, whereas the Machinima, you'll notice on their starting hex, they don't have a brown starting world. So pay attention to some of those differences also. The Hydran Progress, for example, they actually start with Advanced Labs, and they have an additional starting pink world that they can place that cube on. But they can also, with the research action, they can buy 2 technologies, they get 2 ship movements. As I mentioned during the setup, they can place a population cube in the advanced science population square on their starting hex. Their track looks a little bit different, so they've got one where they don't have a victory point start. They start with advanced labs, they have a 3-to-1 ratio, and they start with more science. Next one are the descendants of Draco. They're actually descendants of the ancients. So they can actually have ships and hexes that contain ancients, but they cannot battle with them. But the ancients will actually help them in battle. They may place influence discs in those hexes. The ancients would just stay there. But they may not collect the discovery tile from the hexes with the ancients. When they take the explore action, they may turn 2 hexes and they get to choose one or discard both. 2 ships activations per move, and they actually get 1 VP per ancient ship left on the game board at the end of the game. They have a 3-to-1 trade ratio, and those are the starting resources. One thing to keep in mind is while they can coexist with the basic ancients, these advanced dreadnought ancients are not as friendly, so they will have to fight these. They cannot coexist with these special ones. The other exception is if you use the ancient dreadnought as your galactic center one. That one is also not friendly to the descendants of Draco. A couple other smaller points is they cannot draw the ancient hive, so they could not pick that one as one of their discovery hexes. They don't have a brown starting world, they don't have any starting technologies. They can get the discovery token as long as there aren't any ancients guarding it, because they're not allowed to attack them. But they would just place their influence disc on top, but not get the discovery tile. Next are the Planta. With the explore action, they can explore 2 hexes, one after another. So they almost get back-to-back hexes, or they do with the explore action. 2 movements. They actually have 4 colony ships. Their population cubes are always automatically destroyed by an enemy ship at the end of combat. So it's like their enemies all have neutron bombs. But they get 1 extra VP for each controlled hex at the end of the game. Slightly different reputation track. They've got different ship blueprints. Their initial technology is the starbase. They have a 3-to-1 trade ratio and 4 of each resource and storage to start the game. That's the Planta. Next are the Exiles. 2 ship movements. They get 1 VP for each orbital that they have a cube on at the end of the game. They actually have an orbital in their starting sector hex that they can put a cube on. They have different ship blueprints. Their orbitals function as kind of star bases. They have a 3-to-1 trade ratio. They start with the cloaking device and the ability to build orbitals, and those are the starting resources. So you'll notice for the Exiles, their orbital ships will have a blueprint that you can add stuff to. You're not allowed to have a drive on it. It stays stationary within the hex. And then as long as you have a cube on it, it's considered your ship. When an orbital is destroyed in battle, you have to place your cube in the graveyard, but never remove the tile. A destroyed orbital allows your opponent to draw 1 reputation tile. Those are the Exiles. Next is the Rho Indy Syndicate. They're actually going to start with 2 interceptors instead of 1 on their starting tile. They get 4 movements for each activation, or 4 activations. They have only 2 colony ships, 2 ambassador tiles. They don't get the negative points for having the trader card at the end of the game. They get money for destroyed ships. It's called the Pillage Special Action. So you receive money for opposing ships you destroy. After they draw the reputation tiles, you take 1 money less than the number of tiles you drew. So in this example, if you draw 4 victory point tiles, move your money storage marker 3 steps. So you get money equal to 1 less than the number of tiles you drew. The reputation track looks a little bit different. Different ship blueprints. They can construct dreadnoughts. They start with the star-based technology and the Gauss shield, and they have different trade ratios depending on what they're trading. If they're trading money, they can trade 3 to 2, and then for all others it's a 3 to 1 ratio, and those are their starting storage resources. The next one are the Magellans. They actually receive a free discovery tile from the technological advancement. It's their revelation power. So basically, the first time a technologies tile is placed on the 4th space on any of your technology tracks, you get a free discovery tile. And you only receive the tile the first time. You only get it once. You don't get it for each track. So you'll get 1 discovery tile for free when you place a technology on the 4th space. 2 ship activations. Only 1 colony ship flip with the influence action, but at any time you can flip unused colony ships and receive 1 free resource per colony ship. 1 VP at the end of the game for each discovery tile you either discarded or used as a ship part. So if you didn't take it as VPs, save those, you keep those tiles next to your player board, and you get 1 VP at the end of the game. There's their reputation track. They have fusion stores as their starting technology. They get a trade rate of 3 to 1, and those are the starting resources. And the final species are the Enlightened of Lyra. So they have the ability to construct shrines. We'll talk about that. In the combat phase, they can flip an unused colony ship to re-roll one of their own die, and they can use this as long as there are unflipped colony ships. 2 ship activations with the move. They get 1 VP for each shrine they control at the end of the game. That's their reputation track. They start with the distortion shield. They have a 3 to 1 trade ratio, and those are the starting resources. So let's see how shrines work. So basically, at the beginning of the upkeep phase, they can construct 1 shrine on any hex they control. Shrines cost resources. A shrine may only be placed next to a planet of the same color. So if they're going to build this, it's going to cost 2 money resource, and they could put this next to an orange planet. This one will cost science. They can put this next to a science one. This one will cost materials. They'll put it next to a material-based planet. A shrine may only be placed next to a planet of the same color. Each planet may only hold 1 shrine, but then each hex can hold several shrines if they have the supporting planets. Any color can be placed next to a gray planet. That's a wild. And then if they build all 3 shrines of the same cost, they immediately receive the related shrine bonus. So for example, if they build all 3 of the cost 2 shrines, they immediately get the wormhole generator. If they build all the 4s, they'll get an action disc, and if they build all the 6s, they get 3 victory points at the end of the game. For this second one, this special action marker, the components, they include an additional prosperity influence disc, I think, which is purple. So it gives them the ability to use all of their influence discs plus this one throughout the game if they get the supporting technologies and get the shrine bonuses for getting all the 4s built. And those are all the species and powers in Eclipse compared to the standard Terran power that basically has a 3 move action versus kind of a standard 2. They have 1 extra ambassador only slot, and you'll remember kind of the human species have a trade power of 2 to 1 on resources. But those are all the alien species. So that should help a little bit in understanding some of the species, some of the special promo hexes, the different technologies and development tiles, and the discovery tokens in Eclipse and the basic expansions.